Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the return, finally, of Going Mental. We have Dr. T back. And speaking of Dr. T, let me introduce her and welcome her back to working with the two of us again to talk about mental health issues that affect primarily men and boys. Say hello, the ever red and Rooseveltian now Dr. T.
Yes, welcome to my fireside chat.
You seem to be in the new surroundings there. That's a little bit different than what we're used to seeing you in. Is there any great secret going on here?
Nothing that I want to share publicly yet, but yes, I have now changed residences and I am happily nestled into the fortress of reason.
That is a great place to be. Walking while she talks, folks. So,
yes. There's power of truth over on the West Wing. So, yes, it's great.
Okay. Hey, speaking of sanity, one of the things that sane people sometimes like to do is to talk about the insane. And we're going to do, not that we've ever done that here before, but we're going to be talking tonight about the lies, deceptions, how to tell if a borderline or narcissist is lying. And of course, the temptation is just to fall back, as we did in the announcement, on the old lawyer joke by saying their lips are moving. But the fact of the matter is that most borderlines and narcissists can make lawyers look like George Washington. So
I know some very lovely attorneys. Not all attorneys are like that. NALO.
Yes, okay, that's true. Not all attorneys are like that. But anyway, let me just start off by asking you, Dr. T, why is this an important subject? How to spot lying in one of these people? And I know you relied on a couple of articles that there is links to in the low bar, by the way, and on the announcement page on ABFM and shrinkformen.com. But why is this important? Why do we not need to know how to spot these liars?
Well, fundamentally, to protect yourself. If you're in a relationship with somebody who is disordered or has enough traits of a disordered person for it to be problematic, lying is just another form of abuse. They lie about many things, including gaslighting, which is a classic abuse technique where the abuser tells you, no, I didn't say that, no, I didn't do that, which then gets you to start to doubt your own perception, your memory, what you know to be true, what you've seen with your own two eyes. It's very insidious. And it's also important because you need to know exactly what you're dealing with. Too often, it's very easy to give in to wishful thinking and to want to believe the lies that these types of individuals tell you. But that just keeps you stuck in a really unhealthy and toxic relationship more often than not.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to make and something to remember. In the course of an intimate relationship, one that's allegedly built on trust and faith in another person and the taking for granted that their actions are going to be in the best interest of the relationship as well as themselves and their partners individually, lies are abuse. They're an abuse of the trust. They defeat the goals of most relationships that I've ever heard of. We're talking about future planning. You do that sort of thing with somebody you trust, and when they lie to you compulsively, then that trust is not possible. Now we can refer back to these articles again. What are some of the things about lies? Because some lies are really obvious. Somebody comes home and they've got the stench of alcohol all over their breath and disheveled and says, I wasn't drinking. Well, that's a lie, but often lies are a lot more sophisticated.
Who says he didn't eat the cookie? Yes.
Yes, but that unfortunately does not characterize most lies. And so let's start talking about that a little bit. Other than the obvious lies, what do you suggest people are looking for to tell? I mean, I know if you know your partner's borderline, then they're lying, okay? Just deal with it. You don't have to have your detection kit. If they're borderline narcissists, they're lying to you and doing it regularly. But in the people with traits or the the population that doesn't fill that bill, Dr. T, how do you know? How do you tell when somebody is just abusing your trust?
First, I would say pay attention to your gut. Usually that won't lead you astray. The temptation is, particularly when you're involved with one of these individuals, is to rationalize their behavior, to minimize, to make excuses, to essentially lie to yourself about who exactly you're dealing with. Because it's very hard to admit that truth to yourself, that you're dealing with a toxic individual who is fundamentally dishonest, and not just dishonest with you, but also dishonest with her or himself.
When you say you follow your gut, how does, I mean, people, and I'm a firm believer, and there's no words I have to articulate this, but I believe that there essentially are no secrets in most relationships, that there are the things that people in those relationships deny, but usually if somebody's cheating, both people know about it. Usually if somebody's telling a consistent lie, both people know about it, and they sort of collude to believe the lie together for as long as both people want to maintain the relationship. So how does this play in people feeding into lies? What about the lies that are subtle like that? When you say follow your gut, sometimes our guts tells us to shut up and believe the lie. Sometimes our fears do. And so how do we get past that into getting to understand and accepting whether or not we're dealing with somebody that's being honest?
I don't know if I agree with that. Well, perhaps for some people, but in my experience, it seems more people, in hindsight being 2020, they'll say, I knew something wasn't right. I could feel it, but I wanted to believe it, and then they go through sort of all of these mental gymnastics to minimize what they're feeling at a very instinctual alligator brain level, where something just isn't adding up, just not making sense, but they don't want to believe what their primitive instincts are telling them, which is that you're dealing with a predator.
Now, let me ask you this. I've heard all kinds of things, and the articles, by the way, did a little bit of myth-busting about catching liars, which I thought was important. They talked about how that there's actually relatively few people that are very skilled at catching lies. A lot of police will tell you that most cops can spot a liar. That's not always the case, it turns out. I've heard old, and I don't know if they're just urban myths about if people look up and to the right, they're trying to access a creative side of their brain while they're answering questions, that can be a sign. But most of it seemed to boil down to not any one particular symptom, not like clearing their throat or hesitating or failing to make eye contact, but that the people that were good at spotting lies were good at recognizing groups of indicators of multiple things and sort of putting them all together and saying, okay, this person's being dishonest. Did I sum that up fairly correctly?
Yes. Particularly the material done by Paul Ekman, Dr. Paul Ekman, talks about recognizing the patterns of a series of what I believe he refers to as micro-expressions. And those are the little tells, like the smirk, what I call the sociopathic smirk, which is the pleasure that one of these individuals derives from the sensation of being able to get one over on someone, from tricking someone. They feel superior. They feel like they're getting away with something, and oftentimes they can't hide that thrill, which Ekman refers to as duping delight.
Yeah, I got to ask about that. I found that to be a fascinating concept because, like every other human being on the planet, I've lied. I've told lies in my life. And when I was caught telling lies. My reaction to that was a sense of embarrassment and feeling small and feeling stupid. Why did I do that? That sort of thing. But I also have, in my interactions, sometimes, okay, here we go, borderlines, narcissists, this sort of thing, is that catching them in a lie, instead of producing a sense of shame or a sense of personal responsibility that, okay, you got me, I lied about that, I'm going to own it now, I feel bad about doing that. What I see so often, and I've seen it in a lot of women I've talked to who I believe were BPD, was this little corner of the mouth, this little smirk, turn up, sort of like, I got you. And I mean, and again, you know, I'm not violent. I've never hit anybody, and I've been in a relationship with, but I have been involved with a couple of these women. And if there were moments where I wanted to sock them, Dr. T, it was that very moment of that smugness about doing the wrong thing, the total lack of character involved in that. And I know where my anger about that comes, because it reflected, look at what you picked, man. Look at what you picked to be with. Is this person that thinks lying and betraying people's trust is something to smirk about. And so maybe I really wanted to slap myself. I don't know. But that's as close as I think I ever came to really acting out physically in a relationship, was with that. And I know that smirk. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, it's something I had written about a few years ago that as I mentioned, I referred to as the sociopathic smirk, which is that smug, look how much smarter I am than you, I fooled you, I tricked you. And it's almost as if they have a certain degree of pride when you finally catch them out. And there is a lack of remorse, although there's also another reaction, which is anger and rage, which of course is a defense against the shame that they feel, that they quickly get rid of through either feeling, you know, the rage at having been caught out, or it can be a combination of the two. Like, I'm angry that you busted me, but haha, see, I fooled you for a little while. And it is very vexing, and it's painful, and it hurts, especially if this is somebody that you love and trusted.
I'm going to offer a potential new name. I want to call it the scumbag smile, because that's really what it is to me, is that when people are proud of breaking trust, when they're proud of deceit, it's one thing, again, there's nobody. I mean, one of the things that came up in the articles was that the college students admitted to like telling 2 lies a day, that most people admitted to telling lies. It's part of the human condition that people are not always honest, and there's a variety of different reasons for that happening. Sometimes you're not honest because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Sometimes you're not honest because you're embarrassed. Sometimes you're not honest for any number of reasons. I'm not saying that any of that justifies dishonesty, but the fact is that people are untruthful at times. But the idea of, I'm proud of it. What's that?
There are many, many reasons human beings tell lies. And not all people, obviously, who lie are disordered or predators or sociopathic. You know, we tell white lies to avoid hurting another person's feelings, as you mentioned. We tell lies to protect ourselves. We tell lies if we're in, say, a work situation where our values differ from the organization's values. There are any number of reasons, but we're talking about individuals, if they are disordered, if they are narcissistic or sociopathic, and again, as I've discussed on these programs before, I see narcissism, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder as different versions of sociopathy. They use lying and deceit as a coping mechanism. It's a coping mechanism for them because they behave in such abominable ways that they have to lie in order to maintain their mask of normalcy, their mask of being decent people, kind people, ethical people.
We were talking about this for a couple of minutes before we started tonight, and I was, I identify with that characterization. It's in the years I spent working with people in chemical dependency. Of course, we found out that, the lie was gold. If you're an addict of some kind, you have to hide your lifestyle. You can't talk about where your money went, honestly. You can't talk about where you were, what you're doing. You can't talk about so much of your life because addictions are consuming, and you end up living your life around the addiction, so your life becomes this big spiral of lies, even with people that you're living in the same home with. And so one of the things that we used to have to do is sit down and get people to stop and think a minute about what they gave up for their addiction, primarily their values. But then when you combined borderline narcissists who are dual diagnosed, that we've got the personality disorder and we also have chemical dependency there, you also had a much bigger obstacle to treatment because you were trying to reach people about some sort of appropriate affect to go with the knowledge that they had lied their ass off for years to people that loved them, yet there was nothing there. I mean, it's just like, yeah, well, I had to. If I would have told her or him how I spent that money, they would have found out. I did pretty good. I kept it secret for a while. Well, and that's where I think it was that part of working with chemically dependent clients and looking at the difference in the way people reacted to processing out all these deceits was where I started to figure out, man, I tell you what, when they're borderline, you better run. You better find somewhere else to go.
Sociopathic. They don't feel remorse the way most people do. They don't. They lack empathy. And if lying gets them what they want, if lying protects them from having to experience or suffer the natural consequences of their behaviors, it's their go-to option. It reflects it. They don't even think about it. They just lie. And then when you combine that with the fact that they are more often than not much younger emotionally than they are chronologically, meaning that they might be 52 years old, but psychologically speaking, emotionally speaking, they could be 4 or 15.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, one of the things, like I just said, with addicts, you find them creating this vortex of lies that surrounds their lives because they have to hide the fact that they're addicted. Nobody can just, walk into work one day and say, "Excuse me, I got to go to the bathroom," and shoot up. It doesn't work like that. You have to lie about your habits. What I've seen in the borderline and narcissist people is that there's an inner scumbag there. There's an inner manipulator, con artist, basically shitbird, and they create a vortex of lies around them to try to create an image that they're something other than what they are. They do that with victimhood a lot, always framing themselves as a victim and having people believe that they are put upon or abused in some way or another, that somebody was unfair to them and they deserve sympathy and attention and support. But they lie about their character. They lie about they will sit there and look you in the eye and say, "I would never lie to you." And I had drug addicts that I knew had done cocaine before they came into group, and they would sit there and could do a real convincing job.
Their toxicology report.
Yes, I'd be sitting there with the drug screen in my hand, and they're like,
I'll never forget this one addict I worked with, because like you, I worked in addiction, and I had his toxicology screen. I'm like, "So do you want to tell me about the positive cocaine test?" He said it was secondhand crack smoke.
Oh yes, I've had a few of those, and I've had a few that to say, "Will you explain to me how bleach got into your urine sample?"
Yes.
And all kinds of things like that, and sit there with a straight face and say, "Wasn't me. Must have been somebody else." Well, we sealed up the urine container.
But that's another excellent point, Paul. The narcissist, the borderline, the sociopath will lie, even in the face of cold, hard, can't dispute it evidence. Videotape. There could be video of them doing what they're denying doing, and they will sit there and watch it with you and concoct another lie to explain what they can't explain away.
And of course,
when you're on the receiving end of that, it's like, and this is one of the reasons why I suggested this topic this evening. Is I've lost count of how many people I've worked with over the years and how many email queries and comments on Shrink for Men I've received. Do they know they're lying? Do these people know that they're lying? Because they are so convincing. And this, by the way, is something to pay attention to, particularly if you're going to have to go into the court system with these individuals, is that they have a lot of emotional intensity around the lies they tell. And in fact, that's one of the ways they get people to believe them. Well, goodness gracious, he must have really abused, really done something horrible for her to be so upset. And what they do is they use the intensity of their emotional presentation to get people to buy into their claims of victimhood or whatever it is that they're lying about. But if you can take a step back from the intensity of their emotional presentation and listen to what they're saying, more often than not, you will catch the inconsistencies. You will catch contradictions. Well, wait. Did he take your mail, or did he throw away your mail? Which is it? And when you ask those questions of the person who is lying, they will either create even more lies. I mean, you have to be good at tracking all of this, because if you can track it, more often than not, these people cannot keep up with all of the lies they tell. They just can't, because that's all they're spewing out like a Pez dispenser. But if you pay attention and you're tracking what they're saying, you will catch the inconsistencies. And when you call them on it, they will tell more lies, serve up more embellishments. Now, and the other thing that they do, which is very interesting, and I've seen this happen, particularly with clients who, after the relationship is over, they go back and they do some archaeological digging with friends and family members, and they'll talk to them. So what did she tell you? These disordered individuals, sociopath, narcissists, borderlines, they're very adept at intuiting their target, their audience. And let me use an anecdote to explain that. So a couple of years ago, I went back home to a small town in the Great Lakes region, and I went to a comedy club. And unlike being, say, in New York City or Chicago or another metropolitan area, or like in some little very small conservative town, this was more of a mid-sized city. It was hard to detect, is it Republican, is it Democrat, is it liberal, is it conservative? And you could see the comedians as they went on the stage trying to determine who was in the audience using some test jokes that they were telling, because obviously they wanted to get laughs and not get booed off the stage, so they weren't going to tell a super liberal joke to a very conservative audience. These types of individuals, narcissists, borderline, sociopaths, etc., they do the same thing. They will feel you out. They will get a sense of what your values are, what shocks you, what upsets you, what you care about, and they will tailor their lies to have maximum effect, depending on what it is they're trying to get from you, whether it's sympathy, money, support of some kind. And as my clients do this archaeology, they will see that the story changes a little bit depending upon who their ex was talking to. It's fascinating.
Yes, I've seen that happen in action before. What other reaction I think that we shouldn't leave out is that they will have if the deflection and bobbing and weaving doesn't work out so well for them, is that they will go for the Darvo, and they will accuse you of abusing them for calling them out on their lies. And
who is not a long-time Shrink for Men reader, or, and I think this article I even cross-posted on Voice for Men. Darvo is a concept that was coined. The term was coined by Dr. Jennifer Freyd of, I believe it's the University of Oregon. I may or may not have that right, so don't quote me on that. But it stands for Deny and Reverse Victim Order. Which
is exactly what they do. I didn't do it. It's your fault. You shouldn't be sitting here. I've seen it happen before. I remember a married couple I worked with years ago where the guy had caught her cheating, and when they came into counseling, his issue was that she was being unfaithful in the relationship. Her issue was that he had stumbled on her journal and read in it that he was cheating. So she was there because he had violated her privacy, which she thought was the real big issue. That was what we needed to address in therapy.
That is such a classic example, Paul. I have lost count of the number of men I have worked with who were married to or dating a woman who, if not officially diagnosed, certainly had narcissistic or borderline traits or some combination of the two, or histrionic, sociopathic, whatever. And somehow they stumbled across an email or a text message or heard a voicemail, or the email was left open, and they'd had that feeling in their gut that something wasn't quite right, and they discover this, and all of a sudden the issue isn't that she had been lying, and these women were lying and cheating on their husbands or boyfriends. It's, how dare you read my email? Like, well, fight me. You fight my trust in a egregious way. So I read your email. You've been cheating on me for years.
How dare you catch me?
Yes, how dare you catch me? How dare you look at my email that shows that I have been lying to you and being dishonest? It's around. It's like some crazy Jedi mind trick where they remove the focus off of their wrongdoing and they put it on the person they've actually harmed. And when they get you apologizing to them for the abuses they have done to you.
And that's what I wanted to add, folks. If you're out there in any kind of relationship and you catch somebody being deceitful and then you end up apologizing, you need the therapy. You need some help with that, because what you're saying is that you can never have any moral high ground even when you're doing the right thing. That no matter what she does or he does in a relationship, that if you turn around and find yourself saying, I'm sorry for reading your email where you detailed the blowjob you gave him, well, you're not supposed to be apologizing for that stuff. And if you are so easily manipulated that somebody can turn that situation around on you, I'm going to suggest that you please run to your computer and go to shrinkformen.com, go back in the history to the first article, and don't quit reading until your eyes fall out of your head.
Okay, so, but we're talking about somebody who, if this person is indeed disordered, he or she has probably, like a frog in a pot where the temperature goes up 1 point at a time. There has probably been previous abuse that's gone on that has groomed you to tolerate this. It has groomed you to believe that anything he or she does is your fault.
Okay, I'll buy that, but I'm still going to say, okay, you've been like the frog in the water with the increasing temperature, and you've been groomed to do this. Now, go over to shrinkformen.com and start reading until your eyeballs fall out of your head, because that's still the only solution you got.
And then go to an
get some boundaries.
What's
that?
So yes, and when your eyeballs fall out, then you need another kind of doctor. I can't help you with that, but I'm not sure. Would that be an ophthalmologist or an optometrist? It doesn't matter.
Well, the ophthalmologist is the doctor. The optometrist, I think they have master's degrees or something like that. Who knows? It's one of those eye people that charges too much and has lots of fancy equipment. I want to go back to a minute about the question on whether or not these people know they're lying. First, I want to assert that it really doesn't matter. In the end, it doesn't matter. If somebody is screwing somebody behind your back, and they don't know they're lying about it, then they're too fucking crazy to be in a relationship with. So, yeah, their reality testing is so poor, they don't know the big difference between the truth and a lie. It doesn't matter. You need to get out of that situation every freaking time.
It's something the folks I typically work with will, do they know it's wrong? Is it conscious or unconscious? And those are great questions. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether they know they're lying or not. It doesn't matter whether these behaviors are conscious or unconscious. Yep. The end result is the same.
Yeah, getting hurt by unconscious lying doesn't leave a smaller hole in your heart. It does the same amount of damage, whether they know it or don't know it. You might be able to fool yourself otherwise. But, you know, this question came up, interestingly enough, in the context of Michael Flood, who is an Australian feminist researcher, and I use that term in the loosest way possible. I use a term so loosely you could put it in a whorehouse. But
what Paul means is that he does not adhere to classical scientific methodology.
Yes, and we've written a couple of articles on Gerald Michael on AVFM, and he has come into the comments to protest his unfair treatment. Now, this guy, to me, has personality disorder written all over him. We write about one of his ways, he wants to change the way that we determine the number of female victims versus male in domestic violence by looking only in women's shelters for victims. So, does he? I don't make this shit up, folks. It's the honest truth. That's what he's proposing. Now, does it matter if he made this up? Does it matter if he doesn't know how freaking crazy that is? Does it really matter in the end? No, you don't want to trust this guy's research no matter what. Why? Because he's an ideologue that lies all the time, and more than likely personality disordered to the point that when somebody says, hey, this is a little off there, Michael, he comes in and says, why are you people treating me so badly? Why isn't anybody here interested in legitimate debate? All you people, and does the Darbo, which is exactly what Michael did with that stuff. So you can see this stuff in action. I just think it's funny as hell. Only I get to say that because I'm not living with somebody.
It's funny when you have emotional distance from it, right? But when you're in it, and your heart's in the wood chipper, and you're looking at divorce and losing your assets and possibly your kids, sometimes there's a lot of incentive to believe the lies.
Yes, there is.
In the end.
Unfortunately, and this is where I've got to take a hard line. And look, folks, I get it. I've been there. I've been in a relationship where I was cheated on. I know what the pain of that is. Had my heart ripped out, went through all the stuff people go through. And the only thing that worked for me in the end was that I had to start facing reality whether I liked it or not. And I know, it's a tough pill. It really is. It's hard. The red pill is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people, especially when they need it the most. But if there was an easy, soft way out of being stuck, because look, how about a guy that has 2 kids with somebody and he finds out she's cheating? And now he's going to do what? He's going to leave her with a mother that may be abusive or that may be out at all hours of the night or bringing a different strange guy into the home. He knows that he can't go to court and win. He doesn't have enough on her to get custody. These are really hard things, but that doesn't mean they're not doable. And we have a treat coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to get into more of that. But anyway, so what else, Dr. T? What else do people need to know about liars, how to catch them, why you want to know if somebody is dependably honest with you, and what to do when you do catch them lying.
Well, let's tackle those one at a time. Which one do you want to do first?
Well, let's talk about degrees where it relates to what you do when you catch somebody lying. Like we talked about, there are people that lie for different reasons. Somebody may be sticking away money for something, for a rainy day, or for something that's needed. Let's just make up a scenario. Let's say somebody puts away money because they're concerned about their partner's work status, what's happened, there's employment trouble, so they're putting away money and not saying anything about it, so that's effectively a lie. Is that a lie that you would leave somebody over? I don't think so, unless it's accompanied by 100 other lies. You want to leave somebody because they asked you if you look good in this particular outfit, and they said yes when they really meant no. Do you want to leave over that? Or would they lie and say, it's your baby? Now, there's a different sort of scale of lie. Look at you and say, no, I wasn't cheating with your brother. That's even a bigger lie. Or no, the baby is probably the biggest. But how do you know what's a good lie to try to work with, and try to work with the honesty, or the kind of lie that should be deal breaker? Or is there a way to know?
Well, I think everybody has their own individual barometer on what deal breakers are. I mean, some people don't care about infidelity. I know people whose parents, the dad's been having affairs for years, but mom gets to go to the country club every week, and her Neiman Marcus bills are paid, so she doesn't care if he's sleeping with all of his secretaries. So she colludes with the lie because it supports the kind of lifestyle she wants, as a for instance. So when you have two people who are enabling one another, they're quite comfortable with living with their mutual lies, and that's not how I would choose to live, but that works.
Well, that makes sense in the same way that a prostitute doesn't care if her customers have sex with other women. That's not a problem.
Right. But I would say, and it's not just in thinking about what should be a deal breaker for you if somebody lies. Okay, if they lie and say, no, your butt doesn't look big in those jeans, but in fact it does. You know, he or she was trying to spare your feelings, which is actually kind of nice. No, I don't think that's a reason to end a relationship. But then then there are the lies, and it's not just lies, but any kind of abusive behavior, any kind of hurtful behavior. First, you have to say something to the person, like, hey, you know, you said this, but actually I know that that's not true, or when you said or did X, Y, or Z, that really hurt my feelings. It's the most important thing is, does the other person take ownership of that? Can he or she say, I didn't realize that was hurtful. I feel bad that that was upsetting to you. Or, well, I told that lie because, you know, I was worried you might be really angry at me and I wanted to avoid that, and you busted me and I feel bad. Can they hold themselves accountable? To me, is something that is so very important, regardless of what the offending behavior is. And if they can't, if instead of holding themselves accountable, they flip it around on you and make their bad behavior somehow your fault, that is something you must pay attention to.
And why, other than, I mean, we've identified that there's reasons of children, there's reasons of, you know, you're established where you're living, you've been there for 10 years, whatever, and the whole idea of uprooting your life over this stuff is traumatic, to say the least. But what about, there is also, and I think this is true for a lot of men, that they will go ahead and tolerate simply, it's not about moving, it's not about, say there's no children, it's not, what it's about is they don't want to lose her. And they're willing to accept never being able to believe anything coming out of their mouths in order to keep that relationship intact. How do we reach guys about that? I mean, we keep coming back to this every program, but it eventually does come back to the individual. And I think for men in particular, it's about their fear of loss of a relationship that keeps many of them engaged when they really don't have any business being that way.
Well, the same is true for many women who find themselves in similar situations. And it's that fear of loss. The fear of is the pain of being without the person going to be greater than the pain of being with the person? And if you,
short term, the pain is going to be greater with the loss.
Sure.
But long term, I mean, consider 10 years of living with a liar, 10 years of living with betrayal. As hard as it might be, I think the short-term loss is, and the short-term anguish over it is a lot better way to go, with less ultimate cost than what you get from tolerating it.
I happen to agree with you, but there are some, I mean, not everybody, I mean, obviously everybody has different histories. If somebody was raised in an abusive or dysfunctional family, they're going to have a greater threshold for living with that kind of humiliation and betrayal and pain and abuse. You know, for everybody it's a little different when they hit that wall and that spark of self-respect reignites. And
watch out, I've been there too.
They can't love themselves if they continue to stay in that situation.
Yep. I tell you what, this is another, I think, argument for taking the short-term loss over the long-term pain. Even though the short-term pain sort of condenses it all and it hurts a whole lot for a shorter duration of time, there is a bonus at the end of that you don't get by staying in there. And that is that moment, there is, I think, sort of a switch in people's mind where it comes to grief, where they've finally been through enough pain, they have quit beating up on themselves for picking the wrong person, for staying with the wrong person, for whatever they want to blame themselves for doing wrong in the relationship, and all that sort of process that people go through. At the end of that, there is a moment there where you, I call it the Lester Burnham moment at the end of American Beauty, when somebody asked him how he is and he smiled, because you could tell he realized for the first time in that whole process that he was just fine. And that is a great feeling. And you don't get that by choosing to stay with the dysfunction. You only get that by choosing to get rid of it.
And you have to do it with surgical precision.
Yes, you do. It's a rough way. I mean, all we talk about are rough solutions on this, and I'm glad we do, because somebody needs to talk about them. There's no answers to be found in Cosmo, folks. And Oprah, I'm afraid, is running a little bit short herself. She has more answers now without a TV show than she did when she had one. So these are the real deal. To me, the real deal choices that people in life have to make. It's not some fantasy land. It's not something you find in 3 easy steps, or how to make your man or your woman crazy with desire, how to put the spark back into your relationship.
Reclaiming your self-respect when you've been in one of these relationships. And it doesn't even have to be a romantic relationship. It could be in a job where you're being promised certain rewards or advancement and it doesn't happen. Whatever the situation is, when you realize that somebody has been dishonest with you repeatedly, reclaiming your self-respect is very painful, because it means you have to let go of that wish that things could be different, that the person who's been deceitful to you is going to change his or her ways and be honest with you, and things will be fair and things will be great. But the only way to regain your self-respect is to walk away from that, no matter how hard it is. In fact, the harder it is, the better you will feel in the long run.
I think that's 100% true. Well, let's see now. We're approaching, we have hit our 45-minute mark. I think it's almost time to start. Go ahead.
Comments. I haven't been tracking the comments. Are there any that we should, are there questions?
I have not had comments loaded. I think that unfortunately...
I forgot to queue them up. Sorry, guys.
Well, Google has not been working right with the comments for the past several Hangouts. So as we've seen in others, I figured I'd just wait till Google straightens their mess out, but we would put in comment tracking and then they wouldn't show. So hopefully we'll get back to being able to do that. I want to put Dr. T on the spot here for the last few minutes of our conversation. We have a project we've been working on, and I'm wondering if she thinks this is really true. I mean, she is not expecting this. I'm just wondering if, Dr. T, if you think this might be a good time to start letting the cat peek out of the bag, so to speak, about our plans. And if not, just say no, and we'll make everybody pout and wait.
Kitty says yes.
Well, then why don't you lay the news out for people?
Oh, okay. Well, as some of you may or may not know, Paul and I have been working on a book together for, I'm embarrassed to say, how long now?
A year.
6 months.
Okay.
See, I admit it. See how easy that is? Harmless lie, victimless lie. Paul and I have been working on a book for a few years now in fits and starts, and you know, we procrastinate. Other things have come up. We work a lot on it, and then we can't figure out what to add to it. Anyway, we just handed our editor our rough final manuscript, and we are going to be on, should I say the day?
Yes, I say go for it. We're getting close.
Okay. Well, because I can be mischievous, as some of you may know, we are going to do pre-sales of our long-awaited book by probably a very small amount of people, Say Goodbye to Crazy, on Valentine's Day.
Yes, and then we are going to issue the official publication date will be Mother's Day, which I think is just a nice little 1-2 punch. Say Goodbye to Crazy is about what the title says. It is, I will tell you, I know we have a predominantly male audience, this is a book that is actually written for women. And this is for women who are in relationships with men who are still getting plagued by their batshit crazy ex-wives and girlfriends who are still dealing with her manipulating the court, telling lies about him, undermining visitation, undermining the finances, making their lives miserable. And so ultimately it is a book for him too. It is a book for both of them on how to deal with these, or basically, you know, I think as we said in the book, this is, by the way, all new material. You've not read any of this anywhere on Shrink for Men or Voice for Men. This has been a project that we have been secretly pecking away at, as she said, for quite some time. But it's designed to get rid of that crazy bitch, to put it in a shorter terms. Of course, we're not talking about shovels and duct tape, but we are talking about getting rid of that crazy bitch and getting her influence out of your life. I'm really excited about this. It is coming out February the 14th on Valentine's Day for pre-order.
You will not be able to buy the book in its entirety on on Valentine's Day.
No, you didn't let me finish. I was saying it's coming out for pre-order.
Purchase a copy in advance, which you will then get on Mother's Day, but the intro and I think the about this book will be available online, so you will have a sense of what you will be purchasing if you decide to make a pre-order.
Yes, and it is. I can tell you, most people that have an interest in this topic are really going to enjoy reading the book. What I won't give out too much away, but I will say that as we do when we write in other places, we did not sugarcoat anything. We took the gloves off. We talk in plain, non-psychobabble language, and the book, if I may say so, is damn good.
Well, I still remember the feedback you gave me on one chapter. You wrote back, ego dystonic.
Well, yeah, there was a little bit of psychobabble in there, but when I saw ego dystonic, I thought, I have to confront Dr. T. Oh, okay, well, have to is have to. Yeah. So no, I promise, the word ego dystonic will not be in the book. I promise you. If you find it, you get a free copy for your friend. Anyway, pre-release February the 14th, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day release for those of you dealing with the golden uterus, and you know what I mean. The sense of mama privilege that ex-wives often have, well, particularly high-conflict ex-wives love to use that uterus and their status as mothers to control and destroy and be immune from any consequence. We're going to give you some really solid plans on exactly what to do and how to deal with these unruly bitches. And I'm please just punch that it's coming out. Say goodbye to crazy.
It is not your garden variety self-help book. We're not going to be selling these solutions, which means it might not be successful, or cheap platitudes.
Yep. We've learned a long time ago there's not a lot of money in the truth, but when the truth is all you're interested in writing about, that's what you do. This is not a book that Dr. Phil would approve of. Which I wear as a badge of honor.
I have fantasies of Dr. Phil's head exploding, his mustache flying off of his face if he should ever. I don't see us being asked on, but that's okay. I'll live.
Oh, I think he might do it. You never know. Whether I would go is a different story. But anyway, that's it for the announcement. Want to remind everybody, as we have announced, second International Conference on Men's Issues, hosted by A Voice for Men and emceed by the Red and Rooseveltian Dr. Tara Paul-Matier. She will be there for introducing everybody. She's got a talk she's going to give on her own, and she's going to make this a much more of a fun time. If you saw her talk in the first International Conference on Men's Issues, you get an idea of kind of what we're going to have sort of weaving its way in and out of the entire conference, which makes me all warm and fuzzy.
I still may do Saturday of the event since it will be Halloween in costume. I don't know.
Yeah, we're debating that. Janet Bloomfield has decided that she's going to dress up as a Star Trek yeoman.
As a Valkyrie. I want to dress as a Valkyrie, and then I'm going to need the sound tech guys to play some Wagner for me as I take the stage.
I have no problem with that whatsoever. You get can you get the Madonna breastplate?
I want to like a winged helmet.
Oh, well, anyway, we're going to have fun, costumes or no. That is the 29th, 30th, and 31st of October 2015 in Houston, Texas. Tickets will go on sale April the 2nd, and we will be posting more details on this in the future and getting all the details. We are going to let everybody know because there is, for some reason, the very egalitarian and equality-minded gender ideologue community has made a habit of doing everything they can to keep us from speaking. We will be announcing the actual show venue 1 week prior to it happening, but with ticket purchasers, we will be updating regular information. You'll be on a mail list. Things are a lot slicker and more technically sophisticated for this conference, and the venue is quite a bit nicer than the last one we were at.
List of demands, and they are many.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, we'll try to fetch you that $900 platinum straw you wanted for your 27-degree Celsius drinking water. But we'll get to that later. We'll deal with Dr. T's ambitions at another time. This was fun coming back to this. We will be back next week, and we will be back, and Dr. T will have a direct wire into her modem, so you will actually get her in all her high-definition glory, along with her fireplace.
The older I get, the less high-def I want to be. That's me.
Too bad. That's a show requirement. We're going to string the cables. She's just settling in.
I've got the Barbara Walters filter going.
Yes. Well, apparently the Fortress of Reason does not have Ethernet that stretches where it needs to go for this program, but I'm sure it'll be resolved by next week. I want to thank everybody for showing up, and thank everybody again. A lot of you who helped Dean Esme, you guys are just absolute gold. With that, I'm going to wish everybody a good night. Good night, Dr. T, and we'll catch everybody next time.
Yeah.